All right, welcome back to the channel. If you're just joining me for the first time, welcome. Today we're going to talk a little bit about your 1911. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've just received one in the mail or received one recently from the CMP. You've picked it up and inspected it and signed for it. Now let's take a look at your piece of history here and a few things that you're going to want to do. This is just from my opinion. I'm not an expert gunsmith or an expert collector on 1911s. I'm just going to share a few of my thoughts, and it would definitely benefit you to go see someone who is an expert in these weapons or a gunsmith in general to have a look at your new piece and make sure that it functions correctly and safely. And for my own purposes here, I'm just going to show you a few things that I looked at and a couple of things that I was advised on to pay attention to. Just first things first, when you unbox your firearm, your FFL is going to have you inspect it to make sure that it showed up the way it was intended, quote unquote, depending on the grade and everything. That's really not an issue. The FFL is just going to have you look at it and make sure that there's a gun in there, and that's pretty much it. The CMP, when they ship them out, they claim that they're as is. I'm going to go ahead and clear it while I'm talking here. The CMP, of course, ships them as is, and you'll get a magazine. Mine was a government issue. It's kind of, I'm not real impressed with the magazine. I haven't bought any more yet. I need to do that. That'll be next on the shopping list, I suppose. All right, we are clear.
The number one consideration when you find your way home is safe storage away from kids, irresponsible adults, and thieves. I'll get into that a little bit more later. A safe is going to be your best bet, with your least secure option being hiding it somewhere within your house. Depending on your personal circumstances, you want to make sure that you are the only one who can access this firearm, both from a danger standpoint and the value of the weapon. One unique tip I have is the serial number research. The CMP has a forum section for users to gossip, information sharing, and for speculation. I learned in these forums that you can send a request to the federal government that will tell you the history of your pistol. Redstone Arsenal has an email address you can use, but apparently the more efficient route is to drop a request through foia.gov. The users in the forums explain that the information provided is largely from the time that records and property books were electronic. So if yours left the military service prior to the early 1990s, its Carfax may be brief. So the first thing that I did when I got mine was, of course, to break it down. If you watch my unboxing video, I break that down just a little bit. It has an Aniston rebuild stamp and as well as a Springfield Armory stamp. It kind of leads me to believe that this was probably a Vietnam veteran. Springfield Armory shut down in '68. So the first thing you're going to do once the weapon is clear is you're going to push in that button and it releases the spring. And if you turn your barrel bushing, if you're looking at the gun, you turn it to the right, it should come right out. It gets hung in the spring there just a little bit. Now, as far as disassembly goes, this isn't intended to be a 1911 disassembly video. There are several of those on YouTube. Remove the slide. This cap on the end of the recoil spring actually comes out. Bring that out, and then your barrel should be free to come out of the slide. One thing you're going to need for this job is a small screwdriver and a punch. In my case, my screwdriver doubles as a punch. So the firing pin is under tension. It's got a spring in there, so you're going to push in on the firing pin, and this plate is going to slide that way or to the bottom of the, I guess I can flip the slide around so you can see it. You slide it the rest of the way, facing the table. There's your firing pin, and there's your spring that comes out of there, and there's your extractor. Your extractor sits in this hole. It only goes one way. There's a flat side to that, and that's the way it sits in the slide. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to take a look at all the pieces, make sure, check your spring, make sure there's not a kink in it. Mine's pretty good. Mine's got a chrome line barrel, again a product of the 60s, and M16
generation, that was a popular thing. Keep the barrel from pitting up too much in the jungles of Vietnam and the humidity. You're going to want to look at each piece, make sure there's no serious cracks, burrs, any kind of damage or rust. Depending on the level of severity, you might want to have a gunsmith take a look at it. My slide seems pretty solid. I ordered a rack grade and it showed up in pretty good condition, even for the worst grade. When you take your grips off, you want to be careful about this. With the flood of these pistols in the market, it's probably, and I say flood from the CMP, it's probably not too difficult to find original grip screws. I know at one time it was. It's probably not now, not that I've researched it. I'm going to take my screwdriver, and it's a good idea to use a barrier to get your screws out, especially if it doesn't fit well. If it's your screwdriver's a little bit small, be kind of gentle taking those out. I just break them loose with the rag, or with the barrier. I just break them loose and then basically just work them out with my hands the rest of the way. And these are the plastic grips. Obviously, they just come right off. So the new way to do this is just to find a reputable YouTube source. Check out a 1911 disassembly video. You can also refer to the manual. The CMP includes one in your documentation. The manual that you receive is the 1964 version. There's actually one a little bit more up to date than this, although I don't know how much. I haven't compared the two to see how much more up to date. The 1968 version is the latest one I could find. Every time there's an update or a change, they generally list the changes up front, and I haven't read the new one to see, but you can look through this and there is instructions on how to disassemble the pistol. The copy is not very high definition, just to put it quite bluntly. It explains how to change the sights out with a punch and a hammer. If you want to change the sight fixtures out, there's a slide disassembly. And see, in this image, it's explaining what pitting looks like. I mean, those photocopied images are pretty tough to decipher. If it were me doing it, I would look and find a YouTube video on how to disassemble this, which is exactly what I did. Just make sure it's a reputable source. The gun also comes with a chamber flag, and then you get a little packet. It has the invoice, a couple other documents in it. One thing that you want to be sure of is that you're storing it safely. They send you a gun lock with the firearm. There's a lot of different opinions. Unfortunately, a lot of them are political about these things. As long as your firearm is stored safely, though, especially if you're in a case like mine where you have small kids at home, you want to make sure that that's the number one thing, is that you're storing it safely and storing it separate from the ammo. When you get it down and broken apart and inspected, which mine showed up, it was pretty squeaky clean. I found very little residue of any kind on it. So I like these things. These are Hops gun wipes that are lubricated with CLP, cleaner, lubricant, and protective oil, just specifically for firearms, but you don't have to spend a ton of money on something like that. There are plenty of gun cleaning products out there. Basically, what you want is some good firearms specific lubricating oil and a cleaning cloth if you don't want to use the wipes. And so all I do, if you're a beginner with firearms or don't have that much experience with pistols or firearms in general, is I'll take something like an old t-shirt. Somebody got on to me in the comments on one of my videos about showing this, but this is specifically directed towards someone who doesn't have a lot of experience with firearms. And maybe you think you have to go out and spend a ton of money on cleaning products, but you really don't. Take your oil, and I'm going to use this stuff because it's the most simple kind that I've got. You can use the spray. I'm a big fan of the spray. It's pretty easy. Aerosol, just spray it on there. Or the wipes, they already have oil. And take it. And this cloth's probably a little bit small, but it's just for demonstration purposes. You probably want to cut it a little bit bigger than this and apply quite a bit more oil. But you're just going to take the firearm and wipe the whole thing down, inside and out. I haven't taken the frame apart. I probably won't anytime soon. I may at some point. There's resources available in the manual. It tells you you can take your screwdriver or a pick, even a toothpick or a toothbrush, and get inside the grooves and the holes. That'll help you clean some of the finer details a little bit better. And you want to do this for the whole gun, each and every piece. And it seems pretty tedious, but that's part of owning a gun. Just like when you have a car, you change the oil. You don't necessarily have to wash your car every day or every time you drive it. But for me, every time I shoot a gun, I clean it, just to make sure that there's not a lot of residue in there. I know some competitive shooters, big time competitive shooters, they will just clean their guns maybe a couple of times during a shooting season. But for me, because I don't shoot all that often, I clean them every time I shoot them. Another idea is pipe cleaners. You can use pipe cleaners to clean off your firearm. For the springs, I'll take your oily rag and twist it through there to get a good amount of oil on the spring and to wipe it off. I know when you're in the military, you turn your weapon in dry. You don't want to have a bunch of oil on it. It's got to be clean and dry, but they also have humidifiers in their vaults. I keep a light coat of oil in mine. It's mostly recommended. I've actually don't think I've ever heard of anybody saying not to do that, but I keep some oil on mine just to combat some rust, pitting issues. And it's good for the part too, especially as old as these are, and they've been in storage for a long time, stored dry. You definitely want a little bit of lubrication on it before you shoot it. And so that's why I say you want to clean this before you actually get it out to the range.
One forum user posted that he purchased his pistol in the first round of 1911s from the CMP, which would have been around 2018. Once he received his, he disassembled it and sealed it in a Ziploc bag filled with oil. After leaving it untouched for 2 years, the gun absorbed a tremendous amount of oil and darkened in color. I really would like to do this, but I have reservations since I do shoot it once in a while and I try to use it for YouTube material. I don't know that I would store it for a full 2 years. Maybe I would start month by month and see what progress it would make.
As far as ammo goes, I just use standard full metal jacket 45 ACP. This is 230 grain Blazer brass. I looked in the manual. It doesn't actually specify in any manual that I've seen what weight of bullet that you can actually use. I guess military 45 ammo in its lifetime was pretty much all the same, other than just using dummy rounds blank versus full metal jacket. It doesn't really say anything about hollow points either. I don't plan on shooting hollow points in mine. This is definitely not a carry weapon. This is just a showpiece and a keepsake. This is probably more experienced shooters that can speak to that. I think that this packs quite enough punch, especially no more than what I'm going to be using this gun for targets and whatnot. If you have any question at all about your own experience or lack thereof, I would definitely have this gun inspected by someone a little bit more knowledgeable than yourself. If I didn't feel comfortable with it, then I definitely would do the same. And I actually had a guy look at it who's not necessarily a 1911 expert, but he is a collector of historical firearms.
I really hope in the near future that the CMP allows repeat customers, because for now it's just one pistol per customer only for past, present, and future lotteries, as well as the auction site. Thanks for watching, thanks for coming by, and I'll see you in the next one.